All right, we are with Dale Zolper, and he has been a resident of Mendota for most of your life?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay.
73 years.
And you were an employee of the BN Railroad. Were you also an employee of the CB&Q?
No, I come in 2 months later.
2 months later. Okay.
Well, June, 3 months later.
Okay.
Well, it was March 2nd or something, March 2nd of 70 when they bought them out.
Okay.
March 3rd, I think.
Okay.
Hired out June 6th
June 6th.
of 70.
Okay. And you worked how
No,
many?
June 12th of 70.
Okay. Well, that's a long time because you retired in the 90s, didn't you?
I retired in 2015.
Oh, 2015. Okay.
So just beyond 9 years ago.
Oh, okay.
October of 15.
That's right.
So 45 years, 45 and a half years.
Wow. Wow.
My dad was here 49 years.
Okay. So was your dad, how many Zolpers worked for the railroad?
Well, my dad and his brothers all did at one time. He had four brothers. The one Kenny that ran the bridge in LaSalle, Peru.
Okay.
Remember when they had the lift bridge?
Yes.
Okay, he ran that.
Okay.
That's where my dad was for a while in the 30s.
Okay.
And they got married in 32, and then in 41 they come to Mendota and started as a trainman, switchman. So Marilyn, Marge, and Joe were born down there in the bridge.
Wow.
There was a
What do you
coach.
mean they were born on there?
Well, there was a coach on that bridge. Remember, it had a approach, and everything was up high. I don't remember. Know what I'm talking
I
about.
don't. I remember seeing pictures.
But there was a coach right there by the bridge, and they lived in the coach, and they had 3 kids down there. And Ma said it was time to leave because afraid one of them would drown. So in 41, he transferred from bridge department to train department, and he come to Mendota. 41, worked as a switchman all them years, and he was yard master here for a lot of years until probably 61, 62. They got rid of the yard masters
Okay.
and made conductor the foreman a yard master at night. When I worked a night switch engine, the foreman of the job is considered a yard master. It's called a footboard yard master.
Okay. You mentioned your dad had worked for the CB&Q here.
He started in 27. I
Wow.
think he was 16, 17. Started in 27 as a bridge gang. His dad was bridgeman, his dad, and he had 3, 4 brothers that worked with the bridge gang. For a short time. Dad was the only one. Well, Kenny, the one that lived on the bridge, went till retirement. The other 2 brothers quit. One became a teacher, and the other one was a carpenter.
Okay.
Out in Arizona, he went at the end.
Okay.
And he had a brother that was a carman for the EJ&E for years out of Joliet. And then I got a paper I'd like you to read eventually.
Okay.
He wrote this up in early 70s, before his boys even got on the railroad. So this is his whole family, all his brother-in-laws and brothers,
Okay.
1890 on up.
Really? Maybe.
It's kind of interesting to a guy like you.
Yeah, I would definitely like to insert that in the video, you know.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
very interesting. It's all his relatives, it must be about 20 of them,
That's awesome.
before his
Okay.
boys even come on the scene.
Wow.
I don't think there's anything in there about us boys. We come in later
Wow.
because he wrote it
Yeah.
prior to us.
Yeah. What was his name?
Joseph?
Joseph. How many Josephs were there?
There was all kinds of them. His
There
dad
was always a
his,
Joseph.
his dad was a Joseph, buried in Peru,
Okay.
and his grandpa was a Philip. So
Okay.
his name was Joseph Philip Zolper.
Okay. Now, who was the contractor that did the cement?
Then we're first and second cousins
First
to
and
him.
second cousin. Okay.
Yeah. He always said he had the kids and they had the money,
Oh, okay.
which was true.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty wealthy people.
Okay.
The ones that built the town,
Yeah. Wow.
but they were like second cousins.
Because I seen on the sidewalk an
Oh, yeah.
inscription.
Yeah, that was,
was it Henry Zolper?
A Henry and a Joseph.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know if you remember Mrs. Holland was our teacher.
Yeah.
Northbrook?
Yeah.
She was a Zolper.
Oh,
That was
really?
Joe's daughter.
Okay.
She just died, 10 years ago now, Mrs.
Okay.
Holland.
Wow. Now let's see. Did you ever work the Zering to Streeter branch?
Yes, I did, but it didn't. We never went all the way to the street at that time. The train did, but we didn't. We ran Zering down through LaSalle, Peru, and then through the cement plant, Marquette, and through Bailey Falls. You know where that's at?
I do.
Yeah, Bailey Falls. And we went to Leonore. And from Leonore, we went down into the brick factory. You know, the brick factory
Yes, I
was
do.
in Lowell.
Yeah. Lowell Brickyards.
Okay, we'd go down there. So we didn't go quite make
Yeah.
the last 10 miles between Leonore and Streeter. And then I did run from Montgomery to Streeter the other direction quite often.
Okay.
But I never made the complete loop.
Okay.
And it wasn't long after that they just quit running the trains down through there.
Okay. When did they stop running the Lowell job, Leonore to Lowell Brickyards?
I want to say about 75 was all done.
Really? Okay.
And in 85 they took the bridge apart.
Okay.
But and Dad always says when him and Ma lived on the bridge as a bridge tender, I guess they jammed a cable one day. On one Sunday afternoon, they broke a cable and jammed it on the bridge. And him and Ma had her splice the cable back together. And this was 1939 or 1940, somewhere in there. But he said when they were taking that bridge apart, he went down there and watched, and he said they still had the splice in the cable, which
Held
kind
up.
of interested
Yeah.
him, you know. No,
Wow.
But there again, him and Mom kind of ran that bridge, did the maintenance on it and everything at the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, it was a different bunch of people back then, and they were all tough.
Yeah.
They all knew how to work, that's for sure.
Wow. Were there any severe floods?
Oh
that they
yeah,
had to go
quite
through?
all the time.
All the time.
In fact, I think there was a few times they'd run them out of the coach there because and ran them into Peru, right where the sewage outfit is now. If you know where that's at,
Yeah.
in Peru.
Yeah.
They ran them, and they had a house there. They'd put them up in.
Oh, okay.
It's all long gone. But when we were kids, they used to show it to us
Oh, nice.
right there by the canal. And yeah, there was a lot of times when the ice would come up and it'd hit the pilings and stuff and shake the whole place, the bridge and everything would shake. And yeah, it's just. But they had a lot of parties down there. I mean, he used to have a lot of pictures. Mom and Dad did. They gather up on Sundays for picnics down below. And I come from a big family, so I had a lot of fun down there at the bridge.
Oh, wow.
And I got old aunts and uncles now, and all they talk about when they used to come down to see Joe and Tilly at the bridge, you know.
Yeah.
But it was always called their honeymoon cottage. Oh, he had my dad, I don't know, my dad was always doing something. He was just, that's how he was. And he built, on the back of the coach, he built a deck that was, we'd go down there with my uncle at that time. And it was like going to see Tarzan and Jane because he had that deck out into the trees down there. And you're 30 feet up off the ground, of course. And it was neat for us kids when we go down there to visit.
I bet.
And he built below the coach. He built a room. It was like a basement, but it was still up off the ground 20 feet. So he had the coach, and then he had below the coach. He had that basement. But that's just how my dad was. He was always building something, like Joe and like Gerald. They're always doing something. You know, they just can't quit adding on.
Okay. I understand that spirit. Yeah.
But yeah, so We always enjoyed going down there to the bridge to see my uncle and aunt.
Yeah, and you said it was 1985 was the end of the bridge?
1975, I think they quit the trains.
1970.
10 years later, the bridge was gone.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I think they moved out just prior to 75. I think they moved out up there on Route 6 east of LaSalle, the aunt and uncle.
Okay. Was there any switching to do at Leonore itself? Was there a grain elevator?
No, well, there was, I think, years earlier. All these elevators were more in the 60s.
Okay.
By the 70s, they were disappearing pretty quick. You know.
Okay.
Same with Compton, West Brooklyn. They were all at the end of the railroad.
All right. Because you worked that line too, you
I
said,
worked,
from
yes. Earlville to Rock Falls, Sterling.
Okay. So.
And then you had the other line here, the 9th sub was from Mendota to Denrock. Provincetown, Denrock.
Okay.
And then from Denrock, you'd run into Savannah, but we'd run to Denrock and turn around.
Okay. And were there a lot of grain elevators?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when I heard up in the 70s yet, we would run at night from Mendota to Denrock and then down to Barstow. They'd take care of the tractor, the implement outfits down there in Moline.
Okay.
And it was John Deere, and I can't think of the other one. Was it International Harvester, maybe?
Could be. I don't know.
But even in the mid-70s, they'd bring back big trains at night. They'd bring 30, 40 cars out of there at night back to Mendota on an average.
Really?
So Mendota was quite the place yet in the 70s.
Yes. That was like when I grew up here. I always tell people, I came here to at least experience the last chapter of Mendota's big railroad.
Yes.
The 3 railroads are still here.
Yes. And in the 70s, you had 80, 90 cars going to Sterling every day, every morning.
Every morning?
Isn't that hard to believe?
That is.
They have 2 big engines, and they have troubles on the hill there at going into Pawpaw. That's how heavy it'd be going in, loaded steel going to the
Really?
Northwestern Steel,
Yeah,
I think it was called. Mr. Dillon ran it.
Okay.
And so yeah, you had some big trains out here.
Wow.
Then you had the one that went down to LaSalle, Peru, and they'd run 30 cars down there every day, if not more. When they started going to Howe, maybe in 1983 or 4, they started going down to the old Walker, New York Central area.
Oh, did they?
To Howe.
Really?
You know where Howe is?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
They go down to the switch mobile industry.
Okay.
So yeah, I've done them all, but I didn't make that from Leonore to Streeter. I never did make
No. Okay.
that one little piece.
Was there a LaSalle crew that kind of did that?
No, it was just nothing at that time.
Oh, okay.
They'd run prior to the 70s. They were running a train that came out of Aurora every night, or Eola, and they'd run down the street, and from Streeter to come up through LaSalle.
Oh, okay.
And I think that kind of tapered off. There was nothing there between Leonore and Streeter.
Oh, okay.
No business.
Okay.
In the day crew, there was a switch engine. Of course, switch engines were still on everywhere back then. Mendota had nothing but switch engines. If you went out on the road, it was a way freight. So you had your switchmen and you had your brakemen and conductors. Brakemen and conductors were roadmen. Switchmen just stayed in the Mendota yard. You had switchmen in LaSalle at that time, and the yard limits were out by St. Bede's. The other yard limit was over by Bailey Falls. It's quite a big stretch there.
Yeah.
I want to say 7-8 miles.
Wow.
But the big business down there was Marquette Cement, and they did a whole lot of business with Marquette.
Yeah.
And they'd bring the sand down, and of course you had to weigh all that back then. So they had a scale house in LaSalle. They had a scale here in Mendota. And
Where was the scale at Mendota here?
behind Marathon.
Oh, behind Marathon,
Right
okay.
behind Marathon Oil
All
Station
right.
there.
Okay.
And every yard had a scale house, and everything back then was still weighed. All your cement, all your steel from Cooper Schmidt. Your
Yeah, I
iron.
remember that.
Okay. But and there was a roundhouse at LaSalle. It was gone by the time I got there in the 70s.
Okay.
But and then Streeter had 3 jobs, 3 switch engines at that time that would do the glass houses over there that he owns, and Thatcher's was one of the glass outfits.
Okay.
And then they transferred back at Streeter. They transferred to Penn Central, you know, and to Santa Fe. But I don't know what else.
Well, there's a lot. Anyway, I'll get it out of you. I remember you telling me in the end, we'll skip forward a little bit, when the Illinois Central had just left, I think it was around 85, and the Milwaukee was gone already by 80, and there were still little jobs like Tracker Chemical, there was still Motor Wheel, there was still, did you tell me that you went up the IC up to Amboy?
Yes.
And tell me about that, because I think viewers and listeners would find that interesting.
Well, we were going Mendota to Earl going up to Sterling, and the interstate was coming through at that time. Route 39 was coming through the Compton, between Compton and Brooklyn.
Okay.
And at that time, the railroad wanted awful bad to get rid of that branch. You know, it was a pain in their ass. And we'd go through between Compton and Pawpaw there, and they're building the interstate right up to the tracks. You can see they ain't building no overpass there. Now we're in trouble here because they're grading right up to the railroad tracks.
Really?
Oh. And that must have been about 83, 84. And then all of a sudden they abolished, the branch was out of service at Shaw, Illinois, a little town up there just west of West Brooklyn, was called Shaw. And they took a creek bridge, small bridge, 12 feet long. They condemned it. So that way it shut the railroad down to Sterling for a short time. But then they got permission to run from the IC, from Mendota over there in Mendota to Amboy, back onto our tracks at Amboy, into Rock Falls, Sterling.
Okay. And you
Because they took the Shaw Bridge out, which was nothing, they could have fixed it.
Okay. So you said that was around 83?
I want to say 83. By 85, we were done altogether.
Oh, you were done. So while the Illinois Central was still active,
Right.
you guys were using that branch.
Right.
Okay.
We'd
I
run
mean
up in
that
the evening,
line.
it seems like.
Oh, okay. And you said you had some pretty big trains you'd haul back.
Yes, yes. Up until the last year, we were hauling real good trains. Like I said, there was times when we were only going up there 3 days a week at that time.
Oh,
And
okay.
it might have been down to 2 days. I couldn't tell you now. I'm starting to forget. But yeah, we'd have some good trains yet.
Okay.
60, 70 cars at that time.
Wow.
And then it tapered down to the very end where there was only 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we went up there in the winter, probably the winter of 85 or 86, I forget now. It was around February. We went up on the IC and went to our tracks there at Amboy, and at Walton we got stuck. We had a bunch of we had a rail train with us, and we were trying to get into Rock Falls, Sterling, where we took earlier in the year, we took a bunch of ribbon rail up there. They were going to lay it somehow through Sterling Yard.
Mm-hmm.
So all that rail is sitting up there. Well, now we were at the end of the road where they were going to pick the track up. So now we took a bunch of empty cars up so they could pick that rail back up.
Wow.
We made it to Walton, and we got stuck. I mean, we were stuck real good.
Wow.
That was on a Saturday, I guess. Anyway, they cabbed us from Walton back to Mendota. The next day we went to Yola and got 3 engines from Yola and went up behind our train that was stuck at Walton and pulled it back out of there.
Oh, okay.
That was it. That was the end of it. It was no more.
Really?
So that rail that was up there was left,
Okay.
and they just, I imagine somebody bought it off them.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, what kind of motive power were you guys using to go up there on the IC? What was it? Jeep?
Well, and there again, I can't remember these engine numbers.
Yeah.
You know, they were 3-axle. They were all 2-axle
2 axles.
engines. Yeah, like we got here.
The green and white, right? The green and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think same thing we got here, but
Okay.
that before that we had what was the, like I said, I can't remember the names, but
High nose Jeep 9s.
we had them
Yeah.
earlier, but by the end we were with these again.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
By the end we had a lot of these.
Like the Jeep 38s, maybe,
Yeah,
or something like that. Wow.
but never the 3-axles. You know, that was the whole thing.
Right.
You weren't allowed to take it.
Yeah.
Now they take the big ones down to Peru. They're
Yeah,
down to-
isn't
I can't
that
believe
something?
I can't believe it holds them. But yeah, when it comes to GP9s and all that or whatever,
I know a little bit about that.
you
but
rail
not a
guys
whole
know
lot.
more about them than I do.
Yeah, I'll bet you had a lot of rail fans taking pictures
Oh,
of
yeah,
you guys
yeah.
through the years. Yeah, but I remember, Pat Reed. Who was some of the main crews like here on the local? I remember the Pat Reed, Ed Yeager, and Ted.
Ted,
Can't remember his last name.
Teddy Bear, they called him Teddy Bear Harrington.
Harrington. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, he was here, and before that there was Hoagie. It was a guy by the name of Hoagland.
Okay.
He worked here a lot. The Yeager boys all worked here. Bob and Paul Yeager,
Oh, okay.
Ed Yeager, Francis Glazier,
Okay.
and then the people here you had like Buck Moore. I don't know if you remember Buck or not.
The name is familiar.
Yeah. And Ed Moore sang. They moved him from the IC Tower to Mendota, or to the depot at the end.
Oh, okay.
And after that, they moved him to, I think at the end he was in Ottawa working.
Oh,
But
okay.
he was an operator. Ferris Wright was an operator clerk in here. Then prior to that was Bill Long and my dad and Charlie Harmon.
Charlie Harmon, I remember him getting a ride from him.
And Charlie had his dad out there, Harry Harmon.
Oh, okay.
And Harry was alive when I started working. He would walk around the town, you'd see him all over the place, Harry.
Yeah.
They said Harry and Charlie never talked to each other.
Oh, no?
Charlie was kind of I don't know, anyway, his dad didn't have much use for him, I don't
Oh,
think.
boy.
I shouldn't say that.
Oh, boy. Well, sometimes that happens.
But yeah, they'd be next to each other, they wouldn't even talk. I
Really?
noticed that, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I remember Charlie Harmon. Yeah.
Howard Whamoff was an engineer.
Oh, okay. Howard Wamwat.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I think his boy's down there. Do you know his boy, Bob?
Oh, yeah, Bob. Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to go down and see his setup sometime.
Oh, well, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just texting with them this morning.
Yeah, so I worked with Howard quite a bit. I worked with him in LaSalle when I first started out.
Okay. Do you have any stories about Howard Wamwat?
Well, just anytime you cut the air in, if you big hole the engine, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
No. What is
Well, you'd be cutting the air in down below with the air hose in the angle cock.
Right.
You'd be cutting it as slow, but once in a while it'd dump the air on the engine. You'd lose everything.
Oh, okay.
You had to reset
Okay.
the air and pump it off and all that. And every time we would do that, he'd knock in his window there. He had a can of snuff there. He said, hey, every time you do that, you gotta take a snuff.
Oh.
I remember the first time he gave me one, damn, I about fell over.
Really?
Stuff makes you dizzy.
Yeah.
The first one. So that was Howard, but no, Howard was just a nice guy, just
Was
a
he?
good guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great.
And I think he was restricted at the end because back then, if you had diabetes, you were restricted to the yard.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, he had run Galesburg to Cicero.
Oh, really?
So they did him a big favor by restricting him.
Yeah.
They brought him back home. You know.
Oh, right.
So he was working with Sal until they took it off, and then he come to Mendota after Charlie Harmon left.
Oh, okay. So after Charlie Fahler left.
Yeah.
Interesting.
See, Charlie was the oldest of the bunch.
Yeah.
We had an engineer by the name of Maglitz. Do you remember D.D. Smith? He was the conductor when Pat Reed come up.
D.D. Smith?
Yeah, Pat would have been the brakeman and Dee was the conductor. But then when Dee left, Pat took over as conductor.
Oh, okay.
But they call him Double Deck Smitty.
The name sounds familiar.
Anyway, he's still alive and he's got to be in his 90s.
Really?
Yeah, but he's out in Arizona somewhere.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Are we going again?
Yeah, we are. Do you have any stories or anything we should know about the IC Tower?
Well, not a whole lot, just that Maury worked there and Glenn Carl worked there. I don't know if you know Glenn Carl
No.
from the 60s. Fred Wagner worked there years ago.
Okay.
Knew that, didn't you?
I remember meeting Fred.
Yeah. Greenwood worked there. That's where they all got started, I guess. Greenwood, Fred. No, I would go in there quite often.
Would you?
Yeah. And well, we worked this night job a lot, and Maury there would be a derail down there behind the tower. And we'd had trouble getting down there at night with him. I don't know. He'd try to slow the job down, so he would hold the derail on us. Or first of all, we had the first pot out here, light to get down to the derail, and we had to call him to get down there. And of course, we didn't have radios then. The engineer had a radio, but nobody else did. And it had these telephones everywhere in the yard. But 4 cranks would give you the IC tower.
Oh, okay. 4 cranks.
4 cranks, and the one long crank I think was the roundhouse, and the short crank. One short crank was this place. 4 cranks to the tower, and you had all kinds of knife switches on there too, in order to get the dispatcher. Which at that time I think at that time that dispatcher was out of Galesburg, but we wouldn't connect with him much. I'd be up to the tower to do that.
Oh, okay.
But you could do it. With these phone boxes, they were everywhere. There must have been about 6 of them in this yard, and then they were, as you went up the branches, there was phone boxes at every station.
Okay. I remember one down by 2nd Street on the Illinois Central.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
Yeah. And
this one with more, it'd be a wet, rainy night, and you'd put that head thing over your head, and I'd give 4 cranks, and I'd electrocute myself.
oh,
And that gets you mad at Maury. But he didn't want us getting done too soon, so he'd hold the lights on us.
so you were trying to get into the Illinois Central yard?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even we'd have used the Illinois Central as headroom for our switching moves.
Oh.
I don't. You remember we used to come down there at night by your house, close to your house.
Yes, I did.
And that was because we were still switching up here. We were switching all these tracks from this end of the yard.
Oh.
You had about 7 tracks here.
Yeah.
1 and 2, and then the coach and the scale, and then
Yeah.
the mill.
So I always thought that the local was just going down there to pick up or
The
set
transfer, yeah. And we did that too.
out. Did that too, but I did not know.
Oh, yeah,
that you guys were switching.
Yeah, we
long
had a lot of
trains
headroom,
here.
yes.
Okay, because you couldn't go out on your own main here. You couldn't.
Right,
You couldn't tie this up.
Right.
Okay.
The traffic, we couldn't, yeah.
Interesting. So
The only time we would go out on the main this way, we'd go to FS. We go there every night.
Okay. Now, while you were doing that, did you ever? I think I know the track layout. You were using the Illinois Central siding, and then did you ever have an Illinois Central train come on the main right next to you while you were doing that?
Yeah, probably did, but I can't remember.
Okay,
now.
all right, because
We
I
were
was
out.
trying to
We
picture
were
that.
we were at 10:30 midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
But the IC seemed to be running day trains.
Yeah,
at that
you're
time.
right, yeah. I don't remember them running too much at night.
But everything was done with a lantern because it didn't have radios. And I remember a lot of times I was down here by the coffee shop by Setchel's
Yeah,
because that's where Raymond could see me, and he was a lot of times he was close to your house.
yeah,
That's how much switching we were doing.
wow,
And Raymond was Raymond Miller,
okay,
and he was a real good guy. He'd be my brother's father-in-law.
okay.
Good guy. And but I do remember that standing down there by the what they used to call it, the coffee shop. It was a coffee shop years ago. I think
Watson's
it was like cat house.
shop,
Yeah. And but yeah, we used that for headroom. I see
Wow,
every night.
That's every night.
Every night we probably did that. Yeah.
That is
I mean, we're talking in the
something I
70s.
forgot. Yeah,
My business was still heavy,
yeah,
and then by 78 and 81, I think they might have took some jobs off here in 81. But through the whole 70s, we had a pretty busy little town here.
yeah. I remember it. Yeah. Did you do any exchanging with the Milwaukee or anything?
Yes, yeah, I did. Well, there again, when I hired out, they still had the connection with Milwaukee. You'd go under the main, and then you get off the main right there by right by the junkyard. We'd take to the south. We'd go into the.
Oh, okay, okay,
Well, they got tore up maybe about 73, 74.
okay.
They tore that up. Derailment was there. From that day on, we had to go to the IC first. From the IC, we transferred over to the Milwaukee.
Okay.
So we went to the IC. We got under their main. Went north of town up where the library is now. We go up that far, and to get the light to go back down to the Milwaukee yard.
Gotcha, yeah.
But there was times when we'd take 30, 40 cars of coal out of there quite often, you know.
Really?
Yeah, and there again, it was all done with lanterns, and you put the 2 or 3 men up there in the coal cars, and
Wow.
one man was always next to the engine, you know, so the engineer could see him.
Yeah,
But we were always up on top at that time. Now they wouldn't let you near the top of a car.
yeah.
But I was on top of the guard. We used to jump some of them.
Oh,
The rain and the snow and all that. I remember once we had this one kid, he was about like you, about 6'5". He'd crawl up down these ladders, but he was afraid to go from one car to the other. And he had legs like that.
uh-huh.
And he couldn't do it. He had
No?
to get down from one and go back up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
Kim
the
Littlejohn.
spacing would have been what?
Oh,
like-
some of them were some of
Too
them
far,
cars got pretty
yeah.
far, and I was nuts for trying some of them.
I think I did it as a kid, you know, I wasn't working for the railroad, but I was crazy to do it. Get up on
Yes.
top of them cars.
Yes, and some of them were awful.
Yeah.
And then with the cushion drawbars, you know, they were really
Yeah.
a good chunk there.
Yeah, those big sections by the coupler there.
And I told my wife, I remember calling going from the caboose to the engine on that West Brooklyn job, you know, quite a few times.
What?
I crawl over, 12, 15 cars, and never 90 cars, but if we had
Oh,
12, 15 cars, I worked my way up just to
wow.
give me something to do. We're only going 10 mile an hour.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
10 mile an hour is a rockabye train.
Yeah, and you had, all this
Yeah.
swaying, you had,
Like you said, back then with a lot of junk cars, so you didn't have the tops. You
Yeah.
had to go over the junk the cons.
oh my gosh. they
But
got
it,
those.
like I said, it gave me something to do. It was about a 7-hour trip. At 10 mile an hour, it took forever.
Oh my gosh, yeah, oh.
And I'd go up, and with Ed Yeager, I'd run the engine, of course.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ed had a heart thing. He was 45 years old and he had a heart bypass
Oh, wow.
and a little bit of cancer. But anyway, Ed was turned into a fitness nut.
Yeah, I remember him in
Yeah.
the end there. He was
Yeah.
pretty fit, and he was retired, and he'd come in here catch an Amtrak train.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he'd jog along the tractor, he'd hang under the bar of the engine and he'd do that job. That time we're only going about 6 miles an hour, so he could run along the engine.
Yeah.
Hanging under the grab iron, Eddie would.
While you were driving.
Yeah. And then he had a pretty long arm on one side.
Yeah, man.
He enjoyed it. And Ed was one of the.
He was always happy when
He was one of the greatest guys I ever worked
Yeah.
with. I miss Ed to this day.
Oh, boy.
I do miss
That's
Eddie.
good to hear.
And Dad always said there's only one Ed Yeager, and he was right.
Wow.
But he was always playing around, doing something goofy,
Yeah.
squirting you with water or throwing something at you.
That's funny.
But
Yeah, I remember being down in Ladd there by the bridge, you know, where the creek goes under, and there's a pretty big trestle there, you know, just east of Ladd. And he was coming over. I was close to the track. He seen me with my tripod and everything, and he stuck his head out,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and he waved, and he was all happy, you know. Those were the days when, you know, the railroad didn't, you know, they didn't say, you know, they're taking a picture of us. They weren't going to report us, you know.
well, at the end of that trip, I was telling you where we got stuck at Walton. Of course, Eddie was, you couldn't put many shovels in his hands, you know. He was the engineer, he didn't do much else. Sometimes them little chin-ups or push-ups you do on his own, but I never seen him use a shovel real well. But
Yeah.
anyway, we were stuck, and I mean, that engine was leaning that night. And the train masters thought the wheels were on the ground. Well, the wheels weren't on the ground, it was just, there was that much snow under the fuel tank that it was tipped.
Oh, okay.
And we're out there digging, all of us, the train master, me, Ed Yeager, and Eddie's wife come up to bring us some chicken.
Oh.
Of course, when she come up with the camera, Eddie got out there in the front with a shovel. Eddie got in front of a lot of cameras. But yeah, I miss old Ed. And all the Yeagers were good kids,
Yeah.
all good boys. But anyway, that was Ed. But I worked with him everywhere, Ottawa, Rockford. We used to go on the Rockford job, I think it was about 4:35 in the morning. He'd come running out of his house there. This is after his first wife died, I think. And anyway, he'd come running out of the house, he'd be getting dressed as he's running out, and he'd put a sweatshirt on, and he'd look up and he had the sweatshirt on backwards. You know, Eddie needed a wife just to dress him.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. He'd come running out of the house and he'd put the hood up and he had it on backwards. But
Oh, boy.
anyway, we worked that Rockford job quite a bit. And that's why I like working with Eddie. You know, he was glad to let me run it.
Yeah.
All my life I was sorry I didn't go firing, you know.
Yeah.
And, but like he said, no matter what job you have, it gets old real quick.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was sorry I didn't go fired for a lot of years. But at the end, I was glad I was better off when I had that caboose. When they took the caboose away, then it was.
Yeah.
I do miss that.
Yeah.
But I did hire out. I went up there one day to go hire out as a fireman. And of course, I talked to the train master. I was a roadmaster. Didn't have a clue who I was or anything like that. He didn't have time for me. And years later, he said, "Zolper, how come you never went fired?" Because he knew I liked running the things. I said, "I did, Dick, but you're the one that turned me down. You more or less gave me a paper and told me to go scratch Go scratch." I said, "You wouldn't take 5 minutes to talk to me."
Oh.
Of course, he didn't realize who I was or anything at the time, you know, and I
Yeah.
just got disgusted and I took the paper and walked out.
Yeah.
But for years, I wish I would have went fired. I did better at the end,
Yeah.
especially when I got to Mendoza. They treated me pretty good here.
Yeah. What were the usual hours? Was that a day job, a switch job that you did here?
Well, when I hired out in the 70s, it was always night.
Always
and
night,
it was
yeah.
10:30 till 6:30, I guess
Oh,
it was.
wow.
And then it went to midnight and back to 10:30.
Was there one local here, or were there two?
No, there was 3 locals.
3 locals.
One to Rock Falls, one to LaSalle, one to Provincetown.
But they all worked separate hours.
Yeah, the one to Provincetown was at night at that time, and then the other two were day jobs.
Okay.
Frank Beckett was on the one. I
Okay.
don't know if you knew Frank.
That
He
sounds
lived down there
familiar.
by you.
Beckett?
He
Yeah.
lived over there across from you by the Milwaukee.
Okay.
And he was a pretty good old guy, conductor. And then he had that LaSalle job forever.
Okay.
And then there was a conductor out of Amboy by the name of Barlow. Ran the Amboy way freight. Then the way freight at night, the conductor was from Aurora or somewhere. I don't know where he was from. I can't even think of his name anymore. And the Agers were the brakemen.
Yeah.
They all had two brakemen
Oh, okay.
at that time, and a fireman. Most of them had firemen, even though the
Yeah.
fireman job was long gone. They still had a fireman.
And they always sported a caboose, right?
Oh yeah, everything had a caboose, and
Yeah.
even this job I was on at the engine room, I had, always hung around with the caboose just because
Yeah.
I couldn't stand riding them engines. They're just
Yeah.
noisy and
Yeah.
dirty and filthy and greasy. And going 10 mile an hour, you're better off in the caboose than you are in an engine.
Right. Right. Yeah. You could fire up them cabooses and get them warm.
Well, and that's it.
Yeah.
I would make a sandwich, in the stove, and had coffee or chocolate or something like that.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
But
I think Pat Reed loved his caboose too. You know,
Yeah,
He was, yeah.
I don't blame anybody.
Yeah.
Them engines were noisy, and
Yeah.
the seats weren't worth a darn.
Oh, yeah.
And even when we run to lacrosse, they give it them goofy seats that they're called bar scoop seats, and that's what they were, just a round seat.
Oh.
And you'd bounce around in that for 12 hours,
Yeah.
The railroad never cared.
Hmm.
They tore them guys up, they didn't give a shit. Safety first, but they never took care of their men, really.
No, yeah. I mean, lately there's been a lot of controversy about, railroad workers, that want more pay because, they're worked more than ever and they're pushed, they want to have them work almost every day. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, since I left, it really went downhill. I mean, they want you working every day, and they're firing you if you miss so many days. Yeah, you're done. It used to be the unions could protect you,
Yeah.
but that's like with me. On the railroad, they always said the day you hired out, from that day on, they'd try firing you, and that was true. For 45 years, they wanted to fire me.
Really?
That's just how they are. But that's how all big businesses are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And my train masters and people around here knew what I was worth,
Yeah.
but the top don't give a shit.
Yeah. That's the problem.
They get rid of you anytime. They got
Yeah.
guys waiting at the door to come in.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. And even I worked Rochelle for a lot of years. I had a train master out there just treated me like shit. And I was his number one man, and he knew it, but he still treated you like shit.
Oh, boy.
I come to Mendota and they treat me like a prince.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
It's the guys that.
So that was the best job you would say you had here?
Oh yeah, Mendota always was.
Yeah.
Even earlier on, Mendota kind of ran itself, and that's how it. When you put too many bosses on top of you,
Yeah.
it's a mess.
Right.
And there again, Mendota had a bunch of good guys there, the Jaegers and Smithies. They were all good men. They all ran the place.
Yeah.
You go to Aurora, you got 7 guys above you that
Yeah.
telling you you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And there again, when I was talking about yardmaster, my dad yardmaster, and then he went to footboard yardmaster. Well, that more or less just said the one guy runs the whole crew there. When I was over here all by myself, like Smitty, like Pat Reed, it wasn't one guy ran the whole place anymore. They didn't have no train masters that bothered them. Train masters wouldn't bother me. They come out around once a month,
Yeah.
That guy in Rochelle followed me around all the time.
Really? Wow.
Just how some people are, And the guy in Rochelle was a clerk or an operator, and they kind of had a hard on for the train department. They didn't like seeing the train department. They could go home when they got the job done. That pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Rubbed them the wrong way, you know,
Wow.
because they were there all 8 hours.
Yeah.
But they didn't realize that brakeman and that engineer and that conductor worked out there in the snow.
Let me double check here. Yeah, the snow.
The snow and the wind and the crap weather. All the nights I was up on top of them boxcars with lightning and everything hitting, you know.
Yeah.
It was a different world then. Like I said, they didn't have radios. And at the end, we were doing about 1/10 of what my dad was doing here in the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
There's no business here, and it's hard to believe to say you were only doing 1/10 of it.
Yeah. And you were doing motor wheel up to 97.
Right. Well, they were doing Del Monte, Motor Wheel, Fasco, Hart Carter, Allied Mills.
Trekker Chemical, did you guys?
Trekker was after Milwaukee left it, of course.
Yeah. Did you guys
And
do that?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah.
Okay.
When I caught the job, you know, somebody was on vacation. But Trekker, and then you had FS, like I said, every night you had, you know, FS, Cooperschmidt, Conkeys.
Black Brothers.
Black Brothers, yeah, Wayside Press.
Alexander Lumber, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, there was business everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you had the transfers with IC and Milwaukee. And back in the 60s, you had all that sand from Wedren was coming here instead of Aurora. You know, it came up through Baker
Okay.
into Mendoza. All that sand came this way. From here it went on, but now it all goes to Aurora, of course.
Yeah.
But Mendoza's doing all that. The potash business they had in the 60s and 70s. Remember they had the North Yard, it was full of potash. You know, it'd be 100 cars of potash they'd dig out.
Wow.
So Mendoza was a going little town.
Yeah.
And at that time they had an agent. But train crew was more or less still ran the work.
That's fascinating stuff there. So overall, you had a great. You're glad that you worked for the railroad.
Yes.
And,
I mean, I'm a dummy. I barely made it through school, and it wasn't for the railroad.
I think a lot of people, you know, loved working for the railroad. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
especially when they retire. You know, because I think the railroad, you make a good living. You know, it's steady, it's solid, and feed the family. And
well, and I hired out in '70, and then my brother hired out in '74, and he got laid off quite a few times. And of course, when you get laid off, and he had a slug of kids, and at that time, you know, you got laid off, you didn't get the unemployment like. The rest we got railroad unemployment, which is rare. It was like $90 a week.
Really? Okay.
It was way really down. It was about half of what everybody else got in the country.
I did not know.
Yeah, railroad unemployment was very, just a fraction of what unemployment is.
Oh, okay.
He struggled through that for a lot of years. Just 4 years behind me. So I was lucky.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I said, we weren't the smartest kids in the neighborhood, but on the railroad we're damn near geniuses.
Geniuses.
My brother always said.
You ran that damn place.
So something ain't right with that picture.
Right. Well, when you started your day, you had. How did these train orders and stuff come in? I mean, pre-computer stuff. So. How did this all work? Where you knew what to do, where you had all these jobs, you had all these setups and pickups, and
well, that was the clerks. You know, at that time they had clerks everywhere. When I hired out, they probably had 3 clerks in LaSalle.
Okay.
And 1 operator. And then here they had 2 or 3 clerks. The operator was down in the tower. Of course, the clerks got all that of the teletype stuff, like they had
Oh,
back in the
okay,
60s.
okay.
Yeah. So everything was teletype. And you had a way bill, paper way bill for everything. Well, even now you got a paper way bill that goes with the train when it comes out of Cicero. But you had clerks that did all the paperwork for you,
Yeah.
which was quite a bit. And but I remember at night we'd go down, and at the end of the night you'd have to let the clerk know how every track stood. You know, every car had every car. I'd shoot this yard at night before I tie it up.
Oh, okay.
So you had to keep track of where every boxcar went, every coal car. You had it.
Oh, okay.
So the clerk could put it all in the order
Interesting.
for the train for the next day.
Gotcha.
And at that time, you had that job that went to LaSalle they went to Kewanee at that time. So you know, the shorts were a short on a station. You know, you know what I'm talking.
No.
Well, you got, say you run Mendota to Kewanee. Well, then you've got your shorts would be like you had a car for Arlington, and then you had a car for Princeton, Wyandotte. You have to line them up. The first car near the engine would be the short, would be the Arlington would be first, and your next one would be for Princeton, and your next one would be for Kewanee. You know, you wouldn't put the Kewanee
Right.
way back in the train.
Gotcha.
It had to be up near the engine.
Gotcha.
So all that had to be switched out at night like that. So
Wow.
there again, you had a lot of shorts at that time. You know, all the way to Kewanee and beyond. You know, the Ponset and the Kewanee did a lot of business at that time. You know,
Yeah.
building the boilers over there.
Wow.
And then the same way here, you know, you had shorts at Paw, Compton, West Brooklyn. I can't remember much at Amboy. I guess there was a little bit of fertilizer at Amboy. And then you had Harmon. And then everything else would have been Rock Falls or
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
So the shorts are your stations as they're coming across, you know, the first one, the second one.
Were there any depots still active?
Not really depots. Do you know Val Fishback? That'd be
No.
Lee.
Oh.
What's his face? His uncle, I think it is.
Um,
Well, anyway, he was an operator down here,
okay.
and he was when I heard out, he was a traveling agent, they called it,
Okay.
and he had a van. He worked Pawpaw, Compton, West Brooklyn in the 70s.
Okay.
It'd be Lynn's uncle, I think,
Oh.
that he goes out to eat with a lot.
Oh yeah, One Lime's uncle.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, he had
Val.
mentioned it as his name. Yeah.
Val. Yeah, he
Yeah.
must be in his 90s, but he's in pretty good
yeah.
shape.
I'd like to talk with him too. You know.
He knows a whole lot more than I do.
Well.
He's from World War II and on.
I'd like to talk with him. Yeah.
But anyway, I forgot what we were saying about Val, but anyway.
But I had asked you about were there any depots along
Oh yeah,
the
so
way?
Val ran all that on that sub up there. I think it was the 10th sub at that time. Ran around a little van.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, there were depots. There was still a depot in Walnut, a depot in Provincetown, Zerian, of course. I see the one in Zerian's gone now. Amboy had a depot that had a clerk in it. Yeah, when I was a sale worker,
Oh,
she was
wow.
the only clerk, I guess. So Val must have ran everything east of her. And Sterling, Rock Falls, Sterling had the depot right downtown there. Someday I'll show you where that's at. It's
Yeah,
still
let's
there.
take a ride. I do want to do that. Yeah.
That's still there, last I see.
Wow.
And Earl had a depot.
Okay.
There was a lot of them out there yet. I can't
Yeah.
remember them all. LaSalle had a depot, like I said,
Yeah.
LaSalle. And at one time, I think there was a depot across from the Red Door down there too. It was Peru's.
Yeah.
But I can't remember that one.
I just seen pictures of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there wasn't men working yet. The section that was out at Walnut yet. But yeah, there was depots here and there.
Okay.
Denrock had a depot right at the very end of the operator.
Yeah.
Sterling had about 3 jobs up there, 3 switch engines.
Wow.
LaSalle had 1 switch engine, but I think they had more prior to becoming on. Streeter had 3. Streeter might have had 2. Ottawa had 3 at the time. So there was a whole lot of work. And I mean, there was a lot of, well, when I hired up, it was 16-hour days. And then it went to 14 hours. So 16 is a killer.
Oh, yeah, it had to have been. I mean, how in the heck do you get any rest at home and do what you gotta do, pay bills and all that stuff, and turn around and come back and do it again?
I think my dad said during the war he worked 9 months without a day off. And they were 16-hour days
9 months.
without a day off.
That's
He said they were tough people, real
Yeah.
tough. Nowadays we're all pansies.
Yeah,
I mean, it's sad, but we're worthless out there.
that's what my friend was telling me yesterday. He says they were tough people. I asked him how in the heck did they build a depot in the wintertime here in 1853, 1854, and he said they were just tough people.
Did it all by hand and a
Yeah.
horse. And,
Yeah.
but it's been that way up until the last 100 years.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah,
they built everything.
yeah,
And everything had a reason for being why it was built. This yard had on a curve. I don't know why they built it on the curve. And here again, I think my dad always said it was his relatives that built this yard.
oh wow.
But they built it on a curve, and it was called a suicide yard because the tracks were so close. The boxcars would rub against each other, and the cab windows on them. Remember the old cab windows that stuck out
Yeah.
6, 8 inches?
Yeah,
You run 2 engines by each other up through this yard, you knock the cab windows off. The
wow.
storm windows.
Yeah, sure.
You do that quite often. I mean, it was the cars would rub together. We'd bring that wire mesh down from Rock Falls, you know, that built highways with. Now, I don't know if it was 16 foot wide or what it was, but it lay in these gonds. Well, a foot would hang out on each side to make it a wide load. We'd bring it through the yard there, and it'd round off.
Really?
All that wire that was sticking out would get bit crooked.
Really?
Just dragging it through the yard, and you see the sparks flying.
Oh my.
That's just how it was. It was
Yeah.
there was more tracks in there than there are now. They took
Yeah.
tracks out.
I remember they went right up to the Milwaukee track, right there. 'Cause
Oh yeah, on the north side, yeah.
on the north side.
And that yard wasn't so bad, but they used this is the one they used everything
Oh, okay, all
for.
right.
And
the
it was
east.
tight.
Yeah. Wow.
And, I used to have a little map, a drawing that I drew up years ago of the yard, but I don't know if it's over there anymore or not.
Wow.
There was a lot more yards than there are now.
Yeah.
And up there behind the ice cream shop, I think Standard Oil had a little siding right there by
Oh,
the
okay.
subway.
Oh, okay.
They had a spigot that came down into the tank car.
All right.
Anyway, so there was a sidetrack right there. It would be right next to the ice cream shop. I think that was Standard Oil that had that.
Okay.
But there again, there was a couple oil outfits up there. There was one up there where Dingus Oil was. Remember, they had their own.
I don't remember that.
Their
one.
own. You remember Steve Dingus running the oil company up there?
I don't,
Before
no.
Marathon.
No.
Well, yeah, all these oil companies had their own little
Oh, okay.
spot. Well, even on the IC, remember Mobile Oil was up there.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. So they were everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
And up there was Dolan Sile. Remember the Sile place where Marathon is?
Yes.
Well, there, right in that area, there was an oil,
I remember that.
bring
one.
oil
Yeah.
from the tracks. A lot of oil cars came in for, I imagine, gasoline at that time.
Yeah.
That was all before my time, though. But yes, Mendota was a going little, busy little town.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated with it. When I grew up, we moved here from LaSalle, and we were right there on the Illinois Central, and then the Milwaukee was across the street, Burlington up the street with the tower, and it was like heaven for a boy, you know, who loved trains. Yeah. And through the years, you know, I I didn't think railroads would disappear like the Milwaukee and the IC. I thought, how do you erase a railroad? They're going to be there forever, But now all we have left is the BNSF, and thank God we have them. But
And they're good. I got lucky. The rest of them all failed.
yeah.
I worked with guys that worked on the Rock Island and came over and worked for the Burlington at the end.
Oh, did you?
The guys that worked used to work that rocket going to Peoria.
Yeah.
They come up here. And nobody from Milwaukee I can remember over with us, but guys from Rock Island came over here.
Yeah. What do we have here, Dale?
That'd be my dad's family ahead of us boys. I think I haven't looked at it in a year or so, but I think he starts out with brother-in-laws.
Okay.
One brother-in-law was more or less designed that bridge through Aurora. What do you call it? The elevation through Aurora. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, the tracks were down ground level.
Okay.
Now you go to Aurora, it's all above the streets.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well,
So he designed
McDonald designed that, I think,
Oh,
in the
wow.
bridge department.
Okay.
He was always proud of that. That would be his uncle,
Okay.
Mac McDonald.
So this is the railroad history of Joseph P. Zolper. It says, my two great-grandfathers were both section foremen on the old CB&Q railroad. Grandmother's father, Tom McKenna, was at Grand Ridge, Illinois. My grandfather's father, Mike Costello, worked around Ottawa, Illinois. Mike Costello was fatally injured on the job, and his son, Pat, took over his job. Pat was about 14 years old when he started on the CB&Q railroad. Pat ran, quote, extra gangs, unquote, before going to train service. Pat left the railroad in 1916 or 1917 for other employment. His brother William Costello was also a section foreman working on the CNW Railroad at West Chicago, Illinois. An uncle, Will Costello, worked on the Milwaukee Railroad as a fireman and engineer, working out of Ladd, Illinois in the early 1900s. Will passed away in 1912. Another uncle, Mike Costello, hired out at Mendota, Illinois as an operator, leaving that and going on the Milwaukee Railroad at Perry, Iowa, as a fireman and engineer, retiring from the latter. Mike's son, Merle Costello, also worked on the Milwaukee as fireman and engineer. Mike's daughter, Marion, married Bill Fallon, employed on the Milwaukee as a fireman and engineer, retiring from the latter in '78. Another uncle, Henry Costello, worked on the section, then the train service as a brakeman, and was fatally injured on the job in 1915. Uncle Ed Costello worked on the track department at times before hiring out as brakeman in 1912. He retired as a conductor off the California Zephyr in January 1964. Ed's daughter, Jean, married a CB&Q traffic department man named Robert Schmidt. Ed's sister, Myra Costello/Cohen McVeigh, hired out on the Rock Island Railroad in 1924, working in the general office in Chicago. She held this job until becoming ill in 1958 or 1959. During that time, Myra, widowed, married a James McVeigh, also employed on the Rock Island Railroad. My father, Joseph H. Zolper, hired out in the late 1890s on the telephone department, leaving it and going into the bridge department. He operated cranes and derricks and worked in the bridge department as foreman out of Streator. He retired from this job in September of 1945. His sister Ann Zolper married a bridgeman, William McDonald, whose father and brothers were bridgemen on the CB&Q Railroad. William McDonald had charge of building the elevation, or the raised portion, in Aurora, Illinois, becoming a master carpenter, a job held until his death in June 1932. Dad's brother Albert Zolper worked on the CB&Q in the bridge department for a while, leaving that job and going into the hardware business in Mendota, Illinois, until his retiring from that position. My stepbrother Arthur Ottenbach, Ottenbach hired out in the bridge and building department around 1929 or 1930. Transferring to a switchman's job at Streator, Illinois in 1937, then going to Aurora as brakeman, retiring it in 1974. My brother Harold Zolper hired out on the EJ&E Railroad at Gary, Indiana. Am I right there?
Yeah, well, he lived in Gary. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was cut off there. I didn't know if it said something else there. Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, so, okay, my brother Harold Zolper hired out on the EJ&E Railroad at Gary, Indiana, on the RIP track around 1955, going to Madison, Illinois, as a car inspector. He left that job after becoming ill around 1968. My brother Kenneth Zolper hired out in the 1930s, becoming bridge operator at LaSalle, Illinois, in November of 1940. The job was abolished in 1976. Brother Donald Zolper joined the bridge and building department in the 1930s. He was foreman of that department until 1957, going to Tucson, Arizona, where he continued building bridges. Brother Ira Zolper worked on the bridge department for the CB&Q for a short time in the 1940s. Ira left to go into a teaching career. For myself, Joseph P. Zolper hired out in the bridge and building department in April 1927, then was made lift bridge operator at LaSalle, Illinois in March 1933, with the opening of the Illinois waterway system, which runs from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. The lift bridge operator not only operated the bridge, but also lived at the bridge site. This arrangement continued for a period of about 43 years for me and my brother Kenny. I left this job in 1940, hiring out of Streator, Illinois, as a switchman. In May of 1941, I transferred to Mendota, Illinois, as a switchman, then yard master, retiring as the switch foreman in August 1975. One of my 6 sons, Gerald, hired out as a brakeman in November 1968, a job he now holds. He worked a short time on the Milwaukee Railroad section before coming to the CB&Q Railroad. Dale Zolper, right here sitting with me. Let's see. Okay, he joined the CB&Q as a brakeman in June 1970. Paul hired out as a brakeman in May of 1972. John also as a brakeman in July of 1973, and all are working these jobs now. My son Joseph W. Zolper hired out in the bridge and building department on June 1st, 1973. He then transferred into the transportation department October of 1974, working as a trainer. Another son, Ronald, worked as a CB&Q clerk and a brakeman for a while in 1964 and 1965, then going into the Army and returning to join Commonwealth Edison at Byron, Illinois, where he is now employed. I believe there should be close to 100 years of continuous service between the McKenna, Costello, and Zolper families. Written in 1977 by Joseph P. Zolper and edited and recopied February 13, 2004 by Joseph W. Zolper. Wow, that's a lot of history. A lot of Zolper history there. Hopefully I read it all there properly.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
I couldn't have read it like that.
That's just amazing. Yeah.
Well, there was 100 years at that time, and about 200 years now.
It amazes me because in my mind I was thinking, yeah, maybe there was about 7 or 8 of you, but there was
There was a whole lot of them
a
there.
whole lot. Yeah. But I really appreciate your time and doing this interview. I really do. It's been great. And I think I've learned a lot, and I know the listeners and viewers will learn a lot too. So we appreciate it, Dale.
Oh yeah, it's been a good life for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd done if it wasn't for railroad.
Yeah, I've just enjoyed watching it from a distance, and being involved in the history and trying to keep the history alive, here at the Mendota Railroad Museum, and we enjoy doing that, to preserve the history. And what we'd like to do one day is maybe in our lobby there have like a big, display of all the different people who worked for the railroad in Mendota. Of course that would be a big display, but it would be neat because we don't want to lose that history.
Well, even when you asked me, there's so many guys that I forgot about.
Yeah.
This is just a handful I could think of.
Right. Yeah.
There was a whole lot more before me.
Yeah.
By the time I got here, they already got rid of a fifth of the men.
Wow.
By 1970.
Yeah.
And now I think they're down to a quarter of what they had.
Yeah.
You got to remember that there was a freight house across the street that probably had
Yeah.
about 20 men working in it.
Wow.
And that'd be in the 60s, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, thank you, Dale. Appreciate it. All right.
All right, we're talking over there at Jonesville between LaSalle and Marquette Cement. There's a tight curve. I remember Dad always talking about one night they ran the engines around that curve. The engineer, fireman, and the fireman had a girlfriend with them. Rolled the engine over, killed the girl. But my ma used to always go down to see her mother, which was in Streeter from Mendota here. And she used to take my two little sisters with them. They'd go Mendota over to Zuri and take that, it was a gasoline car that would run down the tracks there. And she always talked about when they go around over by Deer Park, if you know where that's at. But right as you're coming into the Deer Park there, they hit a little girl on the curb, and she said they were there for hours, I guess the coroner had to come down and all that. But yeah, they used to take that train quite often from Mendota over to Streeter because my grandmother lived right by the tracks there at Streeter, so they step on and step off more or less.
Oh, okay.
But it's just stories I remember.
Okay, very interesting.
You're going back into the 40s there and stuff.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
And the Milwaukee, or we'd go down to transfer to Milwaukee. It always went this way, then the track would come off here and down. And that was all ran by the IC Tower at that time. But I think about 73 or so, that derailment tore all this out. So they got rid of the switch there and they went down to the IC and zigzagged back to the Milwaukee. There's where it went off, see?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where, yeah. This is Cooper Schmidt's, yeah. There's where it went off. So you got it right. So the switch ain't there no more, yeah.
And
That was a switch at one time. That's how they got down there.
okay. And then when they tore that out, then you had to come on the IC.
Then
Can
we
you
went
explain
down-
that movement?
We came down out of our yards here. He went down and went down there somewhere to get on the IC. Well, yeah, just you back there and come on up the main. Hand switch is all the way down onto the main. It was a spring switch down there. The only spring switch I ever heard of. We didn't have them on the Burlington. But then we come up on the main line through town. And then Boris sang and throw the switches and we come back down to Milwaukee.
And that would have been a transfer track right down there.
Yeah.
I don't have enough room on the layout for it, but
Yeah,
I
we are
remember
down
that,
there.
yeah.
But your lights are up here by the depot, of course, in order to get the switches. You remember? More, you had to come up quite a ways up in order to get the switches aligned. That was long gone when I hired out. This is the tower downtown, the IC tower. Well, you got 54 and 55. That was a switch that took you out onto the main line, out the west end of the yard. Or 55, you went down here to the IC. 59 would have been the pot to get down here. That must have been the D road, the 59. The white one ahead of it would have been the light to get you down. The yellow one would have been the D rail, I guess. That'd bring you down here to the IC. Now see, they're having you pull down just below, what is that? What is that highway or road by Cooper Schmidt?
Fifth Street.
Fifth Street, okay. They have you pulling down just below Fifth Street and going on up to the Burlington, up to the main line on the IC. Seems like that was out, and I can't remember. It seemed like we went way down here to get in and out. Seems like we went way out here.
Oh, okay,
Down by your house,
okay.
and then we got up there, way beyond your house.
I know exactly the switch you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, it'd be between First and Second Street, or just past First Street.
Well, that yeah, that
Maybe.
take us. I forgot a lot of it. Tracks, huh? Well, I don't know what the red's because it's our main line. Oh, the red would be the Burlington, maybe, huh? I don't know.
I can't remember. That's why we're still trying to decipher this. Every little bit helps.
And there was crossovers out here by Apple Orchard Park.
Okay,
So you could cross over right here. Two sets of crossovers. See them there?
uh-huh,
The Apple Orchard Park. Oh, this would be 9th Street is right there somewhere.
right.
Okay. There are crossover switches there. And they were operated by the tower at one time until the derailment tore everything out. And then they were hand throw switches by the time I got hired out. You did them by hand.
Okay,
But you could go see the 9th sub is up there where A is.
uh-huh.
That'd be your 9th sub that took you to Provincetown.
Okay,
And the
gotcha.
other two are your main lines. The top one would be main line 1, and the bottom one there would be main line 2, of course. There's your, they were automatic switches then, automatic because the IC tower ran them.
Okay,
And by the time I hired out, they were hand throw switches.
wow.
And
Okay,
I
where,
can't see what
yeah,
it says
oh,
up
yeah,
there. What does
okay.
it say? Oh,
Oh, Illinois Central Railroad?
to Madison. Oh, to Madison and to
Probably
Yeah, Illinois Central
Freeport or
Railroad,
something,
yeah.
yeah. Interesting. All right, well, thank you. That again?
the top one is MS Tower, and that was out by Fasco Mills there,
Okay,
just east of First Avenue.
but not as far as Del Monte?
No, it was just 300 feet
Okay,
east of First Avenue was the tower,
okay,
and that's where the coal chutes were, and that's where the water tower was. In fact, the water tower was there up until a couple of years ago when Fasco was using it. It's gone now,
okay.
but there was a water tower there all that time.
Yeah, I remember that one, yeah.
And do you remember where the coal chutes were?
I don't,
No, well, just
I
east of
seen
First-
pictures.
Just east of First Avenue.
Okay, I just seen pictures of it, yeah.
And see, I don't understand a lot of this over here. This A, B, and C, that'd be like the north yard. You got into the north yard from right here at the depot, and you got out up at First Avenue.
Okay,
You're able to get in on the north yard. There again, Hart Carter had a loading dock there for their equipment, you know.
okay,
We'd switch Hart Carter right there. So, or Humes, but I guess they called it Humes at that time. Be my great uncle Ed Costello. Started out at 14 years old, running telegraphs from Mendota Depot, Union Depot, over across the street to the Faber Hotel. Of course, you know, that big hotel back then. Then he went as in the train department. He ended his career around California Zephyr as a conductor. Oh, go ahead.